Welcome back. The Eastern Cape and Kwazulu-Natal experienced severe flooding that has not been seen in a long time. The flooding claimed more than 70 lives and destroyed roads and infrastructure, left thousands homeless. And this happens on the back of a disaster that happened in Mozambique and several other countries as a result of Cyclone Idai. The effects of climate change are causing havoc across the world, and that includes South Africa, now with drought also being experienced in the Eastern Cape, an unlikely place such as Makhanda. I'm joined by Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, founder of Gift of the Givers, and he is one of the humanitarian agencies that have answered calls for help to those in need. Dr. Suleiman, pleasure to talk to you once again. Can you tell me about the extent of the devastation that you have seen there in KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape?
Well, your introduction is apt. Never before have we seen this kind of the damage. And never before in the history of South Africa have 70 people passed on as a result of a storm. This is incredible. It reiterates what you're saying, that the weather patterns have been changing significantly. And from our observation, from the tsunami of 2004, over the years, the storms are getting bigger, stronger, and more frequent. And this storm in Durban is a classical example of what has happened. The infrastructure was badly damaged, trees were uprooted, streams became big rivers in a short space of time, landslides caused houses to collapse. In informal settlements that were along streams, in a place called Bottlebrush, 80 houses were washed away. In Welbedacht, a whole family of 8 were washed away, and 10 houses were totally destroyed. In Westcliff, in a school, the building fell on the caretaker and his family. Not the building, the walls of the room, and 7 of them passed on. In Marion Hill, several other people passed on in that area. So the destruction in terms of property of informal settlements was huge. Many individual houses were also affected, besides the road and other buildings. Businesses, shops, companies had water, even the media stations had water in the offices, came into the roof. The storm affected everywhere. And the extent of the storm, if you look from Durban, Pinetown, Umlazi, Isipingo, Malvern, Chatsworth, Shallcross, Amanzimtoti, Prospecton, running right along Ikopo, Amzinto, Port Shepstone, and as far as Port St. John's. This is a huge, huge storm.
Now, was there enough early warning to people who live in those affected areas, or is it a kind of freak storm that no one could predict?
Look, the people who are talking about a storm coming, it reminds me of what happened in Mozambique. When I asked the people, did you heed the call that Cyclone Idai was coming? They said, cyclones coming all the time. What's new? It's nothing new. So we don't really bother about it. They gave all these warnings, and we know in the cyclones, they always say it's increasing intensity, and then it goes somewhere else, and it decreases in intensity when it makes landfall. So we didn't take much notice. And even the people in outlying areas, we're not sure if they got the message. So similarly, South Africa has not experienced strong storms like this. Yes, storms have been increasing in nature, but not like this. So people probably thought there'll be some rain, some roofs will be blown away, mostly informal settlements will be affected, but nobody expected that amount of rain. Yes, maybe the weather people expected that amount of rain, but not the public in general.
But from your experience, having gone to so many different parts of the world where humanitarian aid was needed and where devastation has taken place, where would you start in a place such as KwaZulu-Natal and parts of the Eastern Cape where this flooding has taken place and people have lost their homes, their belongings, as well as their lives and their loved ones? Where do you start when you get to that kind of place? What are the people telling you? What do they want from the different agencies and even government?
Well, the first 24 to 48 hours is basically chaos. People are shouting from everywhere. And now with a new phenomenon of social media, you get hundreds of messages. Now, and in this case, some examples. My car can't get out of my garage. My boundary wall fell down. My roof is damaged. My lounge is wet. Those kind of stuff. From those kind of messages to something bigger, that we lost 4 members in our family, that all the houses got washed away. You will then have to look, before you worry about how you're going to intervene in helping, those people. You have to find out who's in danger. You need to find out who's in danger. Is anybody trapped? Are there landslides? Has buildings fallen on anybody? So the public needs to give information because there's no way anybody could know what's happening in a certain street, in a certain suburb, in a certain area. And this was a wide area. So the most critical information at that point is life-saving information. This person, the whole family is trapped like in Westcliff School. In another area, there's mudslides. So you go for the life-saving areas first. Secondly, did anybody get any medical condition? Did they get a heart attack? Did they have something, an asthmatic attack because of the anxiety of what happened? Those are the second level people you got to move. Thereafter, you start saying, okay, now the balance, what has happened? Somebody's going to take care of the roads because to direct traffic. Somebody's going to take care of water and electricity. And somebody's going to take care of moving ambulances to areas to open the roads. Those are all the kind of things you've got to look for. And then, of course, it's not fair, but in the end, you can say, okay, how many people are stranded now? We need to find communities, halls, churches, mosques, schools. Where can we move these people to? And then many people, you have an obstacle there. Many people, if their houses are not totally destroyed, don't want to move from the site of destruction because their life's possessions are in that one informal settlement or in that one shack. They don't want to move away. And that becomes a big problem in many, many disasters, even if they're not so big. If it's just a little bit of flooding or there's fire, people are reluctant to move from their house. So you have to either allow them to stay somewhere close by or make sure the facility you have is nearby. Then comes the next stage, food, blankets, water for the people, and assurance, and whilst that's happening, you start clearing the debris and make things more accessible for the area. It's a process. There's a lot of things to do.
Yeah, but tell me, I mean, from your experience, what is the best way of coordinating the efforts in a situation such as this? And how would you rate the coordination with the South African authorities in an emergency of this nature? How are you guys working together? I'm asking this question so that we can share the lessons that you have learned over time, as well as find new ways of dealing with tragedies and emergencies of this nature.
Well, I've been discussing this issue with government directly. First of all, just as an aside, I told them that international disasters can't fall under local government. It doesn't make any sense because when you have international disasters, you need an intervention of DIRCO. And in that case, international disasters have to fall under DIRCO. It was moved away to local government. Local governments are not diplomats. They don't deal with countries and governments. There are a lot of rules and a lot of red tape involved with dealing with international authorities. So I spoke to Minister Lindiwe Sisulu about it, and she said they're going to look at it seriously. It cannot be under local government. So that's the first point I raised. Secondly, I said the services are disjointed. It doesn't make sense for disaster management to send people. Then those human settlements will look at something to do the houses. Then SASA must do something with the food. And if there's a disconnect between the three structures, which has happened many times, we've been through it many times, and in many cases, we saved the day between all the different agencies. Then you have the problem between municipality and provincial government. And then if the municipality is a different political party and the provincial government is a different political party, that creates another problem. So they need a centralized structure where everything is done by a centralized body, irrespective of political parties. It has to be centralized management, and everything is done a decision-making body at the top. In Pretoria, Cape Town, wherever they sit, this body decides, okay, Kwazulu Natal is hit. We're sending in the disaster teams from all the provinces or all the cities, what's required. We're sending in the helicopters, we're sending in the boats, we're sending in the ambulances, we're opening these hospitals, we're putting in this personnel. Home Affairs will come 4 days later. Immediately, which halls will open up? Which halls are available to us? What resources do we have? In the last few years, disaster management in many places in South Africa have called us to bring resources. Not enough tents, not enough blankets, not enough food. Even now, in Durban, you can see the same thing. Yes, the personnel are excellent. South African disaster management personnel are extremely well trained. They're committed, they're dedicated. When the floods come in the rivers, those divers get into the water and they do great miracles. In terms of individual personnel and capacity and skill, they're brilliant. We now need to coordinate that talent, put it together with all the different agencies, and have one centralized command to respond with one button, to have funds available. I told Aziz Fahad several years ago, I said, Mr. Minister, Trevor Manuel at that time was the finance minister, and that year South Africa scored a lot in terms of tax returns. We were swimming in money. I said he should have taken 1 billion rand, put it one side to keep it for disasters locally and internationally. We need to create a disaster fund that the government can spend immediately, not ask the public or ask corporates to come forward and say, you know what, we need help here. That money should be spent instantly the moment it happens.
And in terms of the civil society response to disasters of this nature, what did you see? What did you observe? How did South Africans respond?
South Africans are great when it comes to civil society response. People open their hearts, their homes, and their doors to the neighbors next door. Always you would find we don't have to rush immediately in the first few hours because we know the people in the same street or the same suburb will make something available. They'll bring food from their house, or they'll bring some blankets, or they'll bring some bottled water to the extent they can afford. It sort of tides the people over till somebody else can intervene. Sometimes, of course, if the whole area is poor, like in Khayelitsha or in parts of Alex, then that doesn't happen. Then, of course, they're dependent on food and blankets and water coming from the outside. But because the area is surrounded by suburbs and affluent areas, it's easy to respond, and people do respond. In many cases, in many fires, you can see the outpouring in Durban with the floods, in Alex, in Khayelitsha, people come forward. In fact, there's too many people that come forward. Too much stuff's come forward. But to answer your question, civil society does a great job to respond to fellow South Africans in need.
Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman, I want to thank you for the job, the excellent work that you are doing, not only in South Africa, but around the world, and you've been doing this for many, many years. So I give you the compliments, but I want a comment from you that how should we start relating to the climate change effects that we are seeing? There's another cyclone predicted for the weekend over Mozambique. We've had this devastation that was very unexpected. It is something new as an experience for South Africa. How should we start thinking, very briefly, how should we start thinking about the effects of climate change?
Well, first of all, we're going to move people away from rivers, because that water could come from anywhere. People got to be moved away from rivers. The other problem is that sewage systems, when they're not working properly, they get flooded and they cause effects of infection and those kind of things. We found that kind of problems in Mozambique and other countries. Even if you have an early warning system, it doesn't work. To me, the most important aspect is your state of readiness to intervene once it happens. People, we can say, okay, people would have been better off if they had better quality houses.
Yeah.
But we saw better quality houses got damaged. They got totally destroyed. You can't prepare for that kind of cyclone. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And the earthquake comes. The best building in the world. You can't do anything about it. What's important is the state of readiness of your emergency services, your hospitals, your personnel, your equipment, and the funding that you have available.
Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman, thank you very much for talking to us, and we appreciate the work that you do. Thank you for joining the Modise Network, and I'm inviting you to tune in again next week. And remember, we always welcome your opinions, your views on the hashtag the Modise Network. Enjoy the day. Till next time.